Ladies and gentlemen, confrontation. The word alone makes many people uncomfortable. It's often seen as something to avoid, a source of conflict, tension, and discomfort. But confrontation isn't the problem. The way we approach it is. Effective confrontation isn't about winning an argument or proving someone wrong. It's about clarity. It's about growth. It's about saying, this matters enough for us to work through the discomfort so we can come out stronger on the other side, because the real enemy isn't confrontation, it's avoidance. When we avoid confrontation, small issues fester, resentments build, trust erodes, and eventually the things left unsaid become heavier than the confrontation ever would have been. The irony is that the very thing we think protects relationships, silence, is often what undermines them. But there's a way to approach confrontation that strengthens bonds instead of breaking them. And it starts with a simple shift in perspective. Confrontation isn't about you versus me, it's about us versus the problem. It's an opportunity to align, to get on the same side of the table and tackle the challenge together. The key is intention. Why are we confronting someone? If it's to punish or shame, we've already lost. But if it's to understand, to solve, to improve, then the conversation has purpose. And purpose changes everything. It's about starting from a place of curiosity, not accusation. Instead of saying, you're wrong, ask, can you help me understand? Instead of pointing fingers, extend a hand. When people feel seen, heard, and respected, they're far more likely to listen. And when they listen, change becomes possible. We also have to be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we avoid confrontation because it's uncomfortable, yes, but sometimes it's because we're not willing to look in the mirror. What if the issue isn't just them? What if it's us too? Effective confrontation requires humility. It demands we check our egos at the door and approach the conversation with the understanding that we might not have all the answers either. Tone matters, delivery matters, timing matters. Confrontation isn't just about what we say, it's about how we say it. A harsh truth delivered with care is far more powerful than a careless truth delivered with harshness. The goal is never to tear someone down, but to build something better together. When done right, confrontation isn't the end of a relationship, it's an investment in it. It's proof that we care enough to address the hard things, that we value the relationship enough to fight for it. It's not about creating winners and losers, it's about creating understanding. So the next time you find yourself faced with a difficult conversation, remember this. Confrontation isn't something to fear. It's a tool. And when used with intention, empathy, and respect, it has the power to transform challenges into opportunities, misunderstandings into clarity, and fractures into foundations for something stronger. Confrontation is not about conflict. It's about clarity and growth. Avoidance breeds resentment and erodes trust, while effective confrontation strengthens relationships. Shift the perspective from you versus me to us versus the problem. Approach confrontation as an opportunity to align and tackle challenges together. The intention behind confrontation matters. When it's rooted in understanding and improvement rather than punishment or blame, it becomes purposeful and constructive. Curiosity and humility are essential. Replace accusations with questions. And recognize that confrontation often involves looking inward as much as addressing external issues. Tone, timing, and delivery define the impact. A caring and empathetic approach ensures that confrontation builds relationships instead of breaking them. Would you like any of these expanded further? Confrontation often carries a heavy weight, largely because we've been conditioned to see it as inherently negative. The word itself tends to evoke images of heated arguments, tension, and fractured relationships. But confrontation, at its core, is not about conflict. It's about achieving clarity and fostering growth. When we understand this, our approach to it transforms completely. When something feels off, when expectations don't align, or when behaviors create friction, the natural instinct might be to shy away, to preserve the peace. But that peace is often superficial, a fragile surface that hides deeper misunderstandings or frustrations. Over time, what we avoid begins to build walls, making it harder to connect, harder to trust, and harder to move forward. Addressing the issue through confrontation doesn't shatter the peace. It uncovers what's necessary to create a deeper, more meaningful connection. Clarity is one of the greatest gifts confrontation can bring. By addressing what's been left unsaid, we eliminate assumptions and misinterpretations that often cloud relationships. We allow people to explain themselves, to share perspectives we might not have considered, and to clarify intentions. In many cases, what we perceive as conflict is simply a lack of understanding. Confrontation, when done with care and intention, becomes the bridge that spans this gap. Growth is the other side of the coin. Relationships grow when they're tested, not when they're left unchallenged. Confrontation provides a space for individuals to learn about themselves, about others, and about the dynamics of the relationship. It pushes people to reflect, to consider the impact of their actions, and to make adjustments that benefit everyone involved. Growth is rarely comfortable, but it's necessary, and confrontation, when approached constructively, is one of the most powerful catalysts for that growth. The idea that confrontation is about conflict is a misunderstanding. Conflict implies a battle, a fight to be won or lost. But effective confrontation isn't about winning, it's about aligning. It's about saying, I value this enough to address what's difficult so we can move forward together. It's not an attack, but an invitation, a chance to create clarity, foster understanding, and build a stronger foundation. When we shift our mindset to see confrontation as an opportunity rather than a threat, it changes everything. Instead of fearing it, we approach it with curiosity and a willingness to learn. Instead of avoiding it, we embrace it as a necessary step toward resolution. Clarity and growth aren't just byproducts of confrontation, they're its purpose. And when we approach it with this understanding, confrontation becomes less about conflict and more about connection. When faced with disagreement or tension, it's easy to fall into the mindset of opposition. It becomes a battle, a struggle to prove who's right and who's wrong. But this perspective often deepens divides rather than bridging them. A confrontation viewed as you versus me shifts focus away from the issue at hand and onto winning the argument, creating a dynamic where one person's victory becomes another's loss. This approach leaves little room for collaboration or resolution, and even if a solution is reached, it's often one-sided and unsustainable. But what if the focus shifted? What if the confrontation wasn't a fight between two people, instead a joint effort to solve a shared challenge? By reframing the situation as us versus the problem, it changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. Now, instead of adversaries, you become allies working toward a common goal. The problem no longer defines the people involved. It becomes an external challenge that both parties are committed to overcoming together. This shift begins with mindset. It's not about assigning blame or proving who's at fault. It's about addressing what's wrong and finding a path forward. It requires empathy, the willingness to step into someone else's shoes and understand their perspective. It requires listening, not just to respond, but to truly hear and absorb what's being said. When both parties feel understood, it becomes easier to move toward solutions that work for everyone. Language plays a crucial role in this reframing. Phrases like "you always" or "you never" immediately position the other person as the problem. But language that focuses on shared goals, like "how can we fix this?" or "what can we do to improve this situation?" invites collaboration. It sets a tone of partnership rather than opposition, making it clear that the intention is not to win at someone else's expense, but to find a resolution that benefits all involved. This perspective also requires a willingness to let go of ego. When the focus is on us versus the problem, there's no room for defensiveness or stubbornness. It's not about being right. It's about doing what's right. It's about recognizing that resolution and progress matter more than personal pride. This humility allows both parties to approach the conversation with openness and flexibility, making it possible to address the root of the issue rather than just the symptoms. When people work together to confront a problem, it strengthens their connection. The act of facing a challenge side by side fosters trust, respect, and a sense of shared purpose. It transforms confrontation from something divisive into something unifying. Instead of tearing people apart, it brings them close together, creating a foundation for healthier and more resilient relationships. The problem may be the reason for the confrontation, but it can also become the catalyst for greater understanding and alignment. Confrontation is never just about the words exchanged. It's shaped by the intention behind those words. The purpose we bring into a confrontation defines its outcome long before the conversation begins. When the intention is rooted in anger, blame, or punishment, the exchange becomes charged with negativity, and the likelihood of resolution diminishes. However, when the intention is guided by a desire to understand, to resolve, or to improve, confrontation can become a powerful tool for growth and connection. Intentions set the tone. A confrontation driven by frustration often comes across as an attack, no matter how carefully the words are chosen. Even when the issue being addressed is valid, the underlying intent to win or prove a point makes the other person defensive, closing the door to constructive dialogue. On the other hand, an approach grounded in genuine care and curiosity creates a space where both sides feel safe to engage honestly. When someone feels that the intent is to solve the problem rather than to target them, they're more willing to listen and participate in finding a resolution. Effective confrontation requires a conscious effort to examine the motivation behind it. Is the goal to express anger, or is it to foster understanding? Is it about proving the other person wrong, or is it about finding a way forward together? When the intention is positive, even difficult conversations can build trust and strengthen relationships. A sincere effort to clarify misunderstandings or address behaviors that aren't working shows that we value the relationship enough to face the discomfort of confrontation. Clarity of intention also ensures that the confrontation stays focused. It's easy for a conversation to spiral when emotions take over, veering into personal attacks or past grievances. But a clear, constructive purpose keeps the dialogue on track. When the goal is resolution rather than retaliation, it's easier to communicate in a way that's respectful and productive. It becomes less about emotions and more about finding solutions. The intention behind confrontation also influences how it's received. People can often sense when a confrontation is coming from a place of care and respect. Even if the message is difficult to hear, they're more likely to engage with it if they trust the intention behind it. Conversely, even valid concerns can fall on deaf ears if the intention seems rooted in hostility or judgment. The difference lies not in what is said, but in the energy and purpose that drive it. Ultimately, confrontation isn't just about resolving a problem, it's about how we show up in relationships. When the intention is to strengthen, not to tear down, confrontation becomes a means of building better connections. It stops being a source of fear or avoidance and becomes an opportunity to demonstrate respect, commitment, and a shared desire to improve. The right intention transforms confrontation from a moment of tension into a moment of transformation. Confrontation often feels like stepping into the unknown, and in that space, curiosity and humility become essential. Curiosity allows us to approach a conversation with the mindset that there's more to learn, more to understand, and more to uncover. It creates space for discovery, where the goal isn't to defend or attack, but to explore. Humility, on the other hand, reminds us that we don't have all the answers. It softens the edges of confrontation, replacing certainty with openness and creating room for collaboration. When curiosity is present, questions replace assumptions. Instead of deciding what someone meant, why they acted a certain way, or what their intentions were, curiosity encourages us to ask. It shifts the focus from judgment to understanding. Asking, "Can you help me understand why you feel this way?" or "what led to this decision," transforms the dynamic of the conversation. It shows a willingness to listen, to see things from their perspective, and to learn something new. Humility takes this a step further by acknowledging our own limitations. It's the recognition that we may not have the full picture, that our perspective is one piece of a much larger puzzle. Confrontation often challenges us to look inward as much as outward. Humility makes us willing to consider that we might share responsibility for the issue, or that there's a lesson to be learned from the other person's point of view. It's not about diminishing ourselves, but about being honest with ourselves. The combination of curiosity and humility creates a tone of respect. It signals to the other person that their thoughts, feelings, and experiences are valued. This not only lowers defensiveness but also encourages openness on their part. When people feel respected, they're more likely to engage in a constructive way. They're less likely to see the conversation as a fight to win and more likely to view it as an opportunity for mutual understanding. These qualities also help us navigate the inevitable discomfort that comes with confrontation. It's easy to fall into the trap of certainty, assuming we know exactly what went wrong and why. But certainty can close doors. Curiosity and humility open them. They allow us to step into the conversation without rigid expectations, ready to adapt as new information comes to light. This flexibility often leads to outcomes that are more thoughtful and balanced than we could have anticipated. Curiosity and humility also protect against ego-driven reactions. When our focus is on understanding and growing, rather than on proving a point or defending our pride, the conversation becomes less about power and more about progress. It's not about being right, but about doing what's right for the relationship or situation. These qualities help us navigate even the toughest conversations with grace and intention. In the end, curiosity and humility turn confrontation into an opportunity for connection. They remind us that every perspective has value and that every interaction has the potential to teach us something. They transform what could be a clash into a collaboration, creating space for solutions, understanding, and ultimately growth. The way a message is delivered often carries as much weight as the message itself. Tone, timing, and delivery are the silent forces that shape how confrontation is received, and they can mean the difference between building bridges or creating walls. It's not just about what is said, but how it's said, when it's said, and the care with which it's expressed. These elements define whether the conversation becomes an opportunity for resolution or a source of further conflict. Tone is the emotional undercurrent of the words we choose. A calm, respectful tone signals a desire for constructive dialogue, while a harsh or accusatory tone immediately puts the other person on the defensive. Even when addressing a serious issue, tone can soften the edges. It shows that the intention is not to attack, but to engage. A tone rooted in empathy invites collaboration, making it clear that the goal is understanding, not blame. Timing is another critical element. Choosing the right moment to address an issue can significantly influence the outcome. A confrontation raised in the heat of the moment when emotions are high often leads to reactive and unproductive exchanges. But waiting too long can allow frustration to build and fester, creating a larger problem than what initially existed. The balance lies in finding a moment when both parties are calm and capable of engaging thoughtfully. Timing requires an awareness of both the situation and the emotional state of everyone involved. Delivery ties everything together. It's not just about tone and timing, but also about the structure and approach of the conversation. A well-delivered confrontation starts with clarity. It avoids vague or generalized statements and focuses on specific behaviors or situations. Delivery also involves listening as much as speaking. A confrontation that feels like a lecture or a monologue will rarely lead to resolution, but one that invites dialogue and gives space for both voices to be heard fosters a sense of partnership. Body language and nonverbal cues are part of delivery as well. Calm, open gestures and steady eye contact convey sincerity and focus, while crossed arms or an impatient stance can contradict even the kindest words. The way we carry ourselves during a confrontation speaks volumes about our intentions, sometimes even more than our words. Each of these elements, tone, timing, and delivery, requires intention and mindfulness. Together, they create an atmosphere where difficult conversations can thrive. They ensure that the message is not only heard, but also understood and respected. When these elements are carefully considered, confrontation moves beyond conflict and becomes a tool for connection and positive change. Confrontation, when approached with the right mindset and intention, is not something to fear, but something to embrace. It's an opportunity to address misunderstandings, foster growth, and strengthen relationships. By shifting the perspective from you versus me to us versus the problem, we create space for collaboration and understanding. With curiosity and humility, we open ourselves to learning and shared responsibility. And when tone, timing, and delivery are rooted in care and respect, even the hardest conversations can lead to clarity and connection. Confrontation isn't the enemy, it's the bridge to better communication, deeper trust, and meaningful progress.